these states in this terrorist attack.
Hello dear friends, this is Moscow Hawk speaking again from Moscow. So I was at a press conference at Maria Zakharova, the spokesperson of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where Sergei Lavrov is the minister. So it's pretty clear that the situation is very dramatic development now. The Cold War went into hot war. So we can take just the European countries with North America, NATO countries against Russian Federation. Well, they claim it's a proxy war. Maybe that's proving now more and more. But just if we take those balances, though, then the Warsaw Pact was with 7 countries, and the NATO with 12 countries. NATO was established in April in Washington, 1949. And then in Warsaw, Poland, the capital of Poland, the Warsaw Pact was established in 1955, after the Bundeswehr, or West Germany, joined NATO. So anyway, so what Maria says and what she is claiming, we should take a look at that now. And unfortunately, it's a very dramatic situation now, continuing. So she says that Zelensky was on a visit in London, Brussels, and Paris, and she called it Cirque Urodov. It means freak show, freak circus, or the circus of creep. It's quite interesting, and the moment is that he is transported, Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, current Ukraine, or how to put it, he's transported in a UK military plane from the Royal Air Force, and also he uses US Air Force. So she claims he is a doll, marionette, from which the West is using in its purposes in this war against Russia, as the Russians say. So the West wanted this bloodbath for a long time. It was planned with long advance. It's a Nazi regime in Kiev, she calls. And the main purpose of this regime of Zelensky's is money laundering of those billions and billions of euros, of dollars they are getting from the West. The newest example is the Norwegian government. Oslo is sending $1.5 billion from the gas funds, she says. Half is for military purposes and half is supposed for civil needs. Further on we go, Boris Pistorius, the new Minister of Defense of Germany, Lambrecht went away. She took off her suitcase from this ministry, Christina Lambrecht. Quotation, it is necessary physical elimination of the Russian leadership. She says that this is reminding of the Nazi Germany philosophy of eliminating whole nations on the continent, the Jewish people, the Russian nation, the peoples of the Soviet Union, and that those people are Nazi-minded and racistic. She also has claimed many times that Josep Borrell, the Catalonian Spanish main diplomat of the European Union, is a racist. I asked her last time, and he claims that the West is the golden billion, they call it, Putin calls this, is big and beautiful, is a garden, beautiful, good garden, but the rest of the world is a jungle. So anyway, on we go with those theses, those points she has. Russian language is being eliminated in Ukraine, and even on the level of personal communications. This is not as long as the Nazi went in Germany, she says, because people could communicate in any language in Germany, but they are now banning Russian in schools, universities, and so on. Some in some ministry of most likely education or culture of Ukraine, some bureaucrat was flattering that they already eliminated and took off out of action 11 million books in Russian. This is not the book burnings on open squares in Germany in the 30s and the 40s, more in the 30s anyway, of last century. Those books are used for energy because of energy crisis. But this is an example of the fight of the war against Russian culture, language, and culture and literature as well. They are taking down monuments and statues of Valery Chkalov, that is a very prominent Soviet pilot. He went through the pole to USA in the 30s. Valery Chkalov, also the liberator of Kiev against Nazi Germany, that's Nikolai Vatutin. He was murdered by Bandera people after the war, and he liberated Kiev from German occupation. Kiev was, of course, in Soviet Ukraine capital, and his monument statue was taken away, broken, and under are his reminiscences, his bones. And she says this is pervertism, sick people which are fighting this gentleman, hero of the Soviet Union, military man, a prominent very military man of the Red Army. What's happening? It proves that this SVO or SMO, the Special Military Operation, quote of course, this invasion of Ukraine, was very necessary from Moscow in order to denazify and demilitarize current Ukrainian authorities. Russophobia is flourishing in Latvia. They are arresting a girl student for expressing her words in Russian and just being Russian. The Danes had some Copenhagen conference with the Ukrainians, with the English Foreign Office, and there were no people invited in order to witness the atrocities for 8 years, even more, against the Donbas people from, Nazi regime, as she says. So this is a cheap spectacle, as Moscow is claiming. The Ukrainian conflict is now supposed to go into Moldavia, because they are fighting Russian-influenced Soviet monuments, and Maria Sandu, the prime minister current of Moldavia, is supposed by her bosses, as he says, in the European Union and NATO, to take Moldavia into NATO and the European Union. So for myself, I can just add that I have said on my TV programs a long time that NATO was established in order to have American influences in Germany, to have Germany down, to hold Germany down, and to hold the Russians out of Europe. So this is proving more or less now with the latest events. So straight we go into the Nord Stream explosions. She said this Seymour Hersh article is not any surprise for Moscow. They knew this more or less. It's not proved, of course, still. But the Swedes and the Danes in Copenhagen and Stockholm, they didn't want any investigation. They didn't want to let the Russian even come near some forensic and investigation processes in this. And Ned Price, the State Department spokesman, he said that the US wouldn't mix into nonsense when he was asked about this gas pipeline explosions. So Marcia said that 20 years ago, Colin Powell was shaking this ample in the United Nations Security Council, and that Ned Price, he should get more acquainted with the history of his office, how Angela Merkel was bugged her telephone. Edward Snowden confirmed that CIA was bugging her telephone for many, many years. The European Union didn't say, no protest. This is an organization without any character. The CIA exploded pipelines, oil refinery in Managua, in Nicaragua, in 1983, 20 years ago in Venezuela. So this is all the deeds of the CIA or the National Security Agency, or those 18 security services of the United States of America. As to those terrible earthquakes, so we sent our condolences to the people of Turkish Republic, of the Syrian Arab Republic, with terrible cataclysm, terrible catastrophe. More than 20,000 people perished. So she, of course, does this as well, but is very shocked that the NATO countries just help a fellow NATO country, Turkish Republic. Not even one bottle of water, not one blanket went to Syria from the west, and this is racism. Well, the new face of fascism. They claim here in Moscow and in the ministry as well, and this is quite bizarre for those people. The Greek Minister of Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, he said that it was impossible to help the neighboring country of Syria because of sanctions. But why don't you lift those sanctions if you want? This is awkward and bizarre to hear. Just if you're a human being, people are dying in masses, and you use this even in this is maybe Europe today, or those humanitarian moments they do. Maria Zakharova sent condolences to the Chilean people because of forest fires in Chile, most likely south, I don't know. It's hot there now, where 27 people died. A French yachtsman in a yacht was sailing in the Indian Ocean, most likely. He was saved by a Russian tanker, and they brought him to Cape Town in South African Republic, and the letter came to the Russian embassy in Paris from his parents. The name of this man is Lucal Monte, and this, as Tomasha says, this is an example of human relationship, of real people's diplomacy, and this is how people's connections should be anyway. Of course, she mentioned Julian Assange. He is now sitting in British prison waiting US court. Maybe he would be transferred. He will die then in American prison. This is an example of Anglo-Saxonian hypocrisy, lies, and the essence of that. So, of course, freedom for Assange. And this is, as for now, this is all. I'm going to meet Lavrov in a special occasion next week. This is they call it off the record. But so if I can report something, I don't know still, But the Moscow Hawks keeps you inside all those happenings and the development. That's all for now, and all the best greetings from me.